Well, so the two things I think we're going to cover the most today are I'm going to start us off and tell you a little bit about some of the cognitive psychology and cognitive science behind basically how our brains work, and hopefully this is some of the things that will be informational to how you're thinking about design. And then we're going to kind of transition to Dr. Bergstrom, who's going to talk a little bit more about how do you measure these things and do testing and things like that as well. Is that fair? Okay, awesome. I don't know. Are there any other left-handed Canadian PhDs? Okay, sorry, left hand. Okay. Okay, great. Well, let's get going. Okay, the other left. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to try not to be too nerdy here for you. Like, you know, that's a, you know, N50, you know, error-related negativity. So that's actually a, oh, so it's right there. Actually, it's right where error-related negativity is. But, okay, well, let's just try and give you a sense here of who we are and what we're doing. So just to give you a sense, I actually do have a PhD, and Johns Hopkins was nice enough to grant it to me. And I was out at UCLA, and then I was a professor, and then now I'm at our little brilliant experience. And we do the kind of things that you do. And so anything else? No, our little company just super quick does things like really understanding an audience, trying to do a little bit of that stakeholder wrangling we just heard about, and then also obviously doing the kind of UX and design work. And we try to apply what we know about psychology to those things. So anyway, that's enough about me. So this is the concept I wanted to get across to you here. So I'm just saying here that the world is not what it seems, in the sense that you're experiencing a certain reality, and it actually is a little different than what your eyes are sensing, or your ears are hearing, and so on. And let me just try and give you a sense. So, okay, so you all know, so we're going to try and hit all the major groups here. We're going to try, we're going to have Magritte, Descartes, J. Crew, who else? There's someone, and Homer Simpson. But actually, so you know Magritte here. So why does he say ceci n'est pas une pipe? Why is that the case? Looks like a pipe. Why isn't that a pipe?
It's just a representation.
Okay, it's just a representation of a pipe. Nice. Okay, so let me just try and show you that maybe you don't always experience really what's really there. So let's see if we can get this to work for us here. And there's a little music to this, but it really doesn't matter. And actually, I'm going to try this just for a moment here, because we don't have our ultimate audio hookup.
Hi, I'm Richard, this is Sarah, and we're going to perform the amazing colour-changing card trick with this blue-backed deck of cards. Now the idea is very simple. I'm just going to spread the cards in front of Sarah and ask her to push any card towards the camera.
Right, okay, let's see. I'm going to go for this card here.
Okay. Now Sarah could have selected any card at all from the deck, but she selected the card which is now face down on the table. And what I'm going to ask her to do is show us which card she selected.
Right, so the card that I chose was in fact the 3 of diamonds.
The 3 of diamonds, okay, an excellent choice. That card goes back into the deck. Now I'm just going to spread the cards face up on the table, do a little click of the fingers, and you'll see that Sarah's card here has now got a blue back. Not particularly surprising. What's slightly more surprising is all of the other cards have got red backs. And that is the amazing colour-changing card trick.
Okay. Okay, so how many of you got all 4 changes? Awesome. The people just walking in, they're like, what is this going on here, man? Okay, so the bottom line is this, that you actually you're focusing on one particular thing. There are all these things changing in your environment, and you fill in all the rest, okay? So my focus here is that you're actually aware of a very small amount of what all is happening, which is actually really relevant to you as a UX designer. Okay, great. So let's keep going. So that's why, who's this? You guys didn't think you were going to talk about Descartes today? Come on. Okay, so Descartes said, cogito ergo sum, why? Because he didn't believe his senses. His only thinking was the only thing he knew could make him real. So the bottom line is he couldn't trust his senses. We'll talk to you about that. It's about phantom limb stuff we can talk about over a beer later. But the bottom line is, why do all these things deceive you, right? Why don't you actually get the full reality? And so let me try and give you this sense. That we broadly have two major ways that we do thinking. One of them is really conscious, right? It's our deliberate system. We're focused. We're trying to be very precise. We know exactly what we're talking about. And the other is unconscious. It's in parallel, goes really fast, and it's approximate, and it's a little different than Rodin, right? So I thought, Rodin, Homer Simpson makes sense. Okay, cool. So the key point here is that your brain is trying to fill in all these gaps so you actually perceive great conscious awareness. You feel like everything around you just makes perfect sense, when in fact it doesn't always. Okay, so yeah, people ask me this. Yeah, I mean like the Matrix, okay? Okay. So the key point here is that what we want to do is try and take advantage of this fast system. And a lot of us UXers don't think about what do we do in parallel? How can we automatically draw attention to the piece they need to know about? How are they going to know where to click and all that kind of stuff? So actually, I just wanted to say that these systems affect you in all kinds of ways. And so let me just give you. So one of them is so where actually do you decide to move your eyes, right? So the answer is that someone in your head decides for you, right? It's not always you. The example I give is where your attention might not even be where your eyes look, right? So if you have, I was imagining meeting Donald Trump and you're shaking his hand, right, trying to be really polite, looking in his eyes, but really you're thinking, what is that stuff on his head, right? And so your attention is in one place and your eyes might be somewhere else. And so anyway, my point is that attention can move around in lots of interesting ways, right? So we can actually help to direct some of that stuff. The other thing I was going to say is that what you feel like you're seeing at any one point isn't always, as rich as what you're seeing. So if you were staring at the shaved ice, by the way, does anyone know where this is? Yeah, it's actually, so one of my old designers, it's her favorite ice cream shop in Kauai. Anyway, so the bottom line here is that when you're staring at that shaved ice, increasingly, the further you go away, your acuity drops off, and so does your color perception. So you'd like to think you feel it like it's really this way, but if we test you, it's really like this. So the point is, when your boss says, hey, it's really great that we've got this delete all your data thing here, but can't we just put the warning over to the left? It'll be no sweat. It'll be really good. And so my point is that, well, if they're looking there, they won't always necessarily be able to read that thing over there. So I want you to know about these kind of principles. Okay. And so, by the way, how many things can you remember in your head? Just like sort of working memory, stuff like that? What have you? 7, 5, 7, 8. Okay, so yeah, there's the notion of 7 plus or minus 2. Great. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have 4 of these dots start moving. Okay, they're all going to move. 4 of them are going to flash. I want to know where the ones that flashed stop. Everyone got it? Okay, was it 2 minutes? Okay, we got to keep moving. Give me one extra minute, too. How are we doing, people who said 7? Smarty pants. Okay, where are they? Deep clap.
Top right.
Okay, it's tough, right? It's hard, not easy. Okay, so you can hold about 4 things in visual memory. It's different than auditory memory, right? Okay, another idea, if I got you to draw this, turns out you actually distort it systematically and see a little bit more than was really there, so you imagine things that weren't really there. Anyway, I can tell you all things. So anyway, I guess my point is this, that if so much of your world is constructed for you, how could we actually take some of that knowledge and help you to be more persuasive? Okay, so some of the things are like directing visual attention, but other things are higher level, like cognitive kind of things. And so I'm just going to blast through this, and I'm going to say, please go and check out our website, and I've got the full list for you there, and I'm happy to show you this later too. But there are all these things like, it's so much easier for us to commit when there's very little to commit to, or there's someone that looks like they're kind of like us. We get curious if we don't see the whole thing, right? So that's a TV on its side. Wonder what the other side is like. Let's check it out. We get attracted by things that are more visually attractive and have symmetry. We like to have alarms that go off so we finish our talks. So anyway, the bottom line is that we tell stories, right? We try to do achievement to make us feel good. Authority is something we trust. There are all these principles we can use. And so Williams-Sonoma tries to make sure there's a really expensive blender, so you buy the slightly less expensive one and think you're really smart. Okay, so anyway, there are all these kind of things I can tell you about. But The moral of the story from all of these is actually, and by the way, this is one of the really powerful ones, the easier you can make it, people are going to do it. Okay, so here's the key, is that really we're not experiencing exactly what's in the real world, okay? We experience our version of it. I can help you construct that, but we need to know about attention and memory and problem solving and the words they're thinking of at that time, exactly like we heard in the previous talk. And you know that actually our brains try to construct this continuous experience for us, but we don't really have actually such a continuous continuity to our existence, actually. So, and you know, we can only keep track of a few things, so we have to keep it really pared down. That's why this mobile first stuff is great. And I think, we can let that go. And so I really want you to design for two things. One is really what we're consciously doing, and also use that parallel system that happens and draws you in so easily with attention and memory and so on, to really have a simpler way to draw people to what they need to make the right decisions. So anyway, I can give you all these kind of principles that we've got on this kind of thing. And I think that's about where we wanted to make it, just to give you a sense of both. We wanted to get the early visual sense that you really don't actually see everything you would like to think you see, and we need to really narrow that down. And secondly, that there are lots of ways that we can construct it to have interesting, persuasive design. So just a taste, I know we got 10 minutes, but we can talk more. Okay, so as Jen's setting up. Okay, Jen, you ready to set up? Come on over.
Well, you can't unplug, then they can't watch this. Let's just watch it, it's pretty good.
There you go. Nice. Okay, team, thank you very much. Let's see here. Oh yes, yeah, actually, it's our little brilliantexperience.com. And I'll see you tomorrow, by the way, too. Okay. Here we are.
So we're gonna, oops, can I use that? Thanks. We're gonna transition now into understanding. So as John mentioned, there's a lot of things going on that people are, I don't know if this is loud enough, that people are unaware of. Sorry, one second. This actually was a good segue from the earlier talk, if y'all were here before. I'm talking about user research and, oh man, Hilton. And understanding our users. And, no. I could just tell you all about it. So anyway, what I am going to talk about is how to actually assess the user experience, taking into account some of these things that, well, there's my dog. These things that people are largely unaware of. All right, so when we're talking about measuring the user experience, well, let me start with the definition of what usability and user experience is. So when we're talking about usability, it's the extent to which a product can be used by specified users to achieve specified goals with effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction in a specified context of use. So we're taking our product, which if for many of us here, that's our website or our application, our device. We're putting it into the hands of our target end users, and then we're seeing how it works from their perspective. So can they accomplish the goals that they intend to accomplish? Can they do that effectively, efficiently? Can they do that quickly? And do they feel satisfied after using our product? And we always want to test in a specified context of use. A lot of things undergo usability testing. These tables, chairs, this podium probably underwent usability testing before actually being sold. You wouldn't want to test this podium in the ocean where people don't actually use it. You would test it in an environment like this where it actually makes sense to assess if people can actually use it. When we talk about the user experience, we're not only talking about whether or not it's usable and if people can complete their goals, but we're talking about if they see value and desirability in a product. If it's something that they're likely to recommend to other people, if it's something that they're likely to come back and use again. Maybe they can complete their goals, but they just don't really care for their experience with that particular product. So we're looking more at people's expectations and feelings. So we want to measure the user experience because sometimes things might seem really straightforward to us, but you put it into the hands of your end users and it doesn't make sense. Like Courtney was saying earlier, a lot of your users' goals are not necessarily your goals. You might think you know what the users want, but then you put your product into the hands of the end user and find out that it's not quite what they want. And you might overlook something really big. So here's error messages on a survey, on a tablet, and on a smartphone. And who can tell me what this error message says? Maybe John, actually. You speak French. It wasn't a French survey. The error message was in French. Not usable at all, right? People can't recover from this error. On the tablet, you might be able to infer what the error is because you can see up above the yellow area. So, you have to think a little bit about what's going on and then figure it out. But obviously, it's really problematic on the smartphone. So people don't even know what this means. It doesn't even look like an error message. They click OK, it disappears. They can't proceed forward through the survey, and then they just give up, and you've lost your user. So pretty big problem. This was another instance where you can see here in red, this was a survey to assess the usability of a website, and it said they wanted to assess other versions of this, of the homepage. And on one version, on the, I think that was the desktop version, it says, please click here to actually view them. But then there was an issue on the tablet version where it wasn't clickable. You couldn't actually ever access that other survey. So again, testing this, putting this into the hands of your end users, understanding their experience and if they can actually use your product is really important. There's a lot of different places we can test. Often we hear, well, I don't have a usability lab, so I guess I can't do usability research. And that's not the case. You can really test anywhere. We don't need to go through this whole list, but testing in the lab, testing remotely, where you stay where you are and your users are elsewhere, or actually going out into the field. There's pros and cons to each of these, but there are lots of options. You don't need a big fancy lab to actually conduct usability and user experience testing. Here's an example of remote testing where you're, in your office and your users are elsewhere, and focus groups. You can conduct one-on-one interviews, you can conduct focus groups, you can conduct surveys to understand your end users. So lots of different ways to understand them. All too often people wait until they have a final product to actually conduct testing. I highly recommend against that. By the time you get to your final product, you've invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of ego, you have your beautiful baby, and then you launch and it epically fails. We don't want that to happen, right? So it's really important to assess how your product works with your end users throughout the entire development lifecycle. You could start with a concept. You can conduct focus groups when you have a mere concept and go to your, what's going on? I don't know what just happened. What's that? Oh, Hilton. Anyway, conducting focus groups with just a concept, talking to people about your new app and discussing other apps that are similar, but things that they don't like about those other apps or things that they do like about those apps. So very initial, before you even have a product to put in front of people, you can be getting user feedback at that stage. All the way through when you have some designs, whether or not they're clickable, they could just be drawn designs, and you put those in front of your end users to understand more about how they perceive this app to work. And of course, all the way through to the final product. So getting user feedback all along the way so you truly have a user-centered design. So often when we talk about, excuse me, usability and user experience research, there's a lot of data that researchers talk about that fit into this bucket here, the explicit feedback. So asking people what they think, when they're interacting with your product, asking them to complete some post-task satisfaction questionnaires or some difficulty ratings on a scale of 1 to 5, how difficult was that task to complete. Sometimes we have think aloud protocol, so just asking people to think aloud while they're working to understand a moment-by-moment playback of what they're actually experiencing and what they're actually thinking. That data is really good. It's really rich. It's really important. But there's a problem with it. You have a chance, users have a chance to actually think about what they want to tell you, what they want to share with you. So if you have something that, if they are feeling something that maybe is a little bit socially inappropriate or unacceptable, or maybe they're angry or really disappointed, and they don't want to share that with you, they don't have to. They have a chance to actually filter their feedback. So in addition to gathering this type of explicit data, it's important to gather observational data. So we're not only asking people what they think and what they feel and about their perceptions of their experience, we're actually seeing how their experience is going. So actually recording things like how long it takes people to complete tasks. Maybe something appears on the screen and you're assessing the reaction time to attend to that particular thing. what they're actually clicking on. These types of things are more concrete. It's what people are actually doing. And that's really great data too, but one thing that we like to focus on to get at things that are outside of the user's thought process and what they're actually capable of controlling are more these implicit data. So things like facial expression analysis, this is still pretty new. I don't think we're quite there yet with the software, but you don't have to do anything. The software is recording various points on your user's face, so you can assess things like frustration or happiness while people are interacting with your product. One more well-known implicit data collection software and hardware, if you will, is eye tracking. So this is something that we use often to really get at where people are looking, the order in which people are looking at things, how they're processing various things as they're interacting. And we have it in the implicit bucket because although people may be able to tell you what they looked at, they can't tell you how long it took them to look at things. They may be able to tell you that something is confusing, but when you look at eye tracking, you could see that they're looking back and forth, and that's showing you that they're confused. So I'm going to show you just a couple examples here of where we've used eye tracking to get at some of this implicit data. So in this example here, we started with focus groups to get at what people liked about the original site and things that they didn't like and things that they really wanted from this site. Throughout this design process, we conducted one-on-one interviews, then we had in-lab usability testing with eye tracking. One of the things that we discovered was that during the sessions, people were saying things like, where's search? I really want search. We went back and looked at the eye tracking data and found that people were looking up in this corner, which is where search is often located on other websites. In addition, on this site, there was a piece that came down, and there was a search component there, but then that piece would disappear. So people continued to look back at this area for search. They weren't explicitly telling us that, but we were able to go back and look at the eye tracking data. It was also really difficult to get started using this website. And when we looked at the eye tracking data, we found that people were looking at all of these icons down below pretty equally, where what they really needed to be doing was entering through here. So it wasn't clear where to go to get started on this website. Asking people where they were looking might have given us a little bit of insight here, but actually having the eye tracking data really helped to understand more about the user's experience. Now I'm getting my time. So this was originally supposed to be a panel discussion, and it's just super short. Anyway, I'll wrap up quickly. So in this example, we wanted to assess what parts of the form people actually read. People had a lot of difficulty using this government form of, it had like 3 pages, and then the 4th page finally has the form. So the client wanted to know what's going on. Why are people having difficulties using this form? And we learned that people weren't reading the form. On the first page, people read one specific section, and then throughout the pages of the form, their reading just went drastically down. And here is another example where we actually used eye tracking to do kind of A/B testing, to test different versions of this form. And it's actually on paper, and we were able to learn that one version of the grid actually made more sense to the way users interact with forms. They processed it in a way that we normally process things, and you could see that on the left-hand side there, where people were following a left to right and top to bottom processing, as opposed to this other grid where people were all over the place. If you stick around right after this discussion, I'll actually be talking about eye tracking and mobile and talk a little bit more about this. So yeah, we're going to end it there and have a discussion for the next 6 minutes. We wanted to open up for questions and chat.
How to learn our microphone.
Yes, we'll be sharing them. Yeah. Yes.
Do you consider eye tracking primarily quantitative or qualitative method, or is it pretty much a mix?
It's both. It's certainly both. Oftentimes we're using them qualitatively, where we've discovered the usability issues and the problems that the users are having, and then we're using eye tracking to support that evidence. So sometimes it is qualitative, and we're really just using the images. But oftentimes we're quantifying as well. You can have areas of interest on your app or on your website, and then actually quantify how often people are looking to particular areas, when they're looking to particular areas, how long they're looking at those areas. So
Yeah.
yeah, it can certainly be both.
Performance benefits across different variants too. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I was just curious if you've been successful at integrating eye tracking through the iterative process of design.
We have, yeah. So actually, we do that often. So I didn't really touch on the iterative design, designing, testing, getting user feedback, and making changes and so on and so forth. But that's actually a great place to use eye tracking because you can see if certain elements are getting attention. And once you've made changes to your design based on your user feedback and your user performance data, then seeing if those designs impact where people are looking and how they're interacting with a product.
What tools are you using?
We use Toby, and they're here. Our eye tracker that we're using is this
Yeah.
little guy here, so you can see it down
It's a strip.
on the.
Yeah.
Yep, so super easy to use with tablets, with smartphones, with paper. So even if you have really early designs that are on paper, you can conduct eye tracking on paper, and that can also be used with desktop.
Yeah, it works well with your laptop too. Yeah. There's SR, there's a bunch of companies out there, but yeah, Toby's the big gorilla. Sure.
Any questions?
Oh, no.
What's a good resource for, you were so quick to talk about the psychological
Yeah,
stuff.
that's a fair statement, yeah.
I never, like, it's a hard question to answer, like, I've seen a lot of those things and I try to apply them and I don't really know if I can.
Okay, yeah, so, a couple different things.
Yeah.
So one is if you're very patient, then you can wait for us we're working on something. But if you're less patient, there's let's see, Susan Weinstein has a thing that says, top 100 things you need to know about psychology for designers. And there are a few things like that. But actually, I think there's two sides to it. One is knowing a lot of the basics of the visual attention stuff. There's a Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. Has anyone read that one? Yeah, that's actually a really good one. And then you go to any of the single word ones. So we got blink, influence, come on, what are the other ones like that? Flow, yeah. Switch. There you go. See, I'm not kidding. Yeah, that's right. But actually, some of those aren't bad for looking at motivation and design practices. So I haven't seen anything where we use a lot of what we know about early visual attention and stuff to make it easier for people to draw them into the right things. It's very simple to do. Like, for example, we're so good at 3 dimensions and we love flat design right now, so we're missing that key right now. But very simple black and white, like higher visual contrast, stuff like that. You go back to, actually, if you can do the Sesame Street, one of these things that's not like the other, you probably got the right visual design. So actually, the squint test. So just looking at really squinting, and see what draws your eyes, because then you're actually looking at it through basically a Gaussian blur.
Or you can bring us in to help you out with that too.
That's a logical opportunity too, yeah, but good point.
I have one random question again.
Please.
How about eye tracking in multiple languages, like right to left as well?
Mhm.
How are you solving those problems in design?
It's often a pretty close parallel mirror, actually, what we're doing. So, I mean, when you start to get to filling out forms with numbers, and then you're going right to left, then left to right, then right to left, it's a little trickier. But generally, it can be pretty, you'll see actually beautiful parallel responses. I don't know, is that what you're seeing too?
Yeah, and I haven't done eye tracking with other cultures that read from right to left, and this comes up quite a bit. I'm actually not familiar with too much research.
And it's actually then when you get like a Japanese newsprint and you're going vertically, it's like I'm off that edge. I don't really know that as well, but it's really interesting to see the difference in performance there too.
But the key takeaway is really that even, you're conducting research, you're going out there, you're asking your stakeholders for information about their users. It's really important to actually go to the end users and get information from them, and not just ask them questions, but actually assess how they're interacting with the product.
Yeah.
And then, if possible, actually get at some of these other more implicit measures that people are unaware of, that they can't describe to you, or they don't want to describe to you, but we can still get that information. It's just a lot easier now to get that information.
Right. You can ask any number of people, hey, how do you think we should do this? What we should do? And then that's really nice, and you write it down, and then you watch them work and watch their behavior, and that's what we find to be the most valuable. So, in all sorts of ways. So yeah, and if you're interested in more of that stuff, we'll talk a little bit. So this guy's getting my my heart rate right now and my GSR and stuff like that. So we were doing wearables talk tomorrow, so we can talk about that tomorrow. But I guess our point is, yeah, there's lots of measurements like that that can be useful in this kind of decision making too. Cool.
All right, well, I'm going to transition into the next talk. Hope you all will stick around for eye tracking and mobile.
Okay, thanks so much.